Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with, I believe, the 39th episode of our first YouTube run through House of Light, the expansion for Book of Hours. And I should just caution here, I started recording an episode only to find out that my audio had been cranked down very, very low. So I think everything's ready to go, but if you happen to notice any imperfections, usually these things are recorded up to a week in advance. So I may not necessarily be able to change it on time, but it is always helpful if people notice an imperfection in terms of it. I can usually try and adjust it accordingly. One other thing I wanted to say in terms of housekeeping, I sometimes feel bad when I shout these things out just because I know usually I'll have about a week to forget things over the course of time, so I don't want people to feel left out. But I believe there was a user on the subreddit Refir who asked if I am indeed the same System Chalk from YouTube, and indeed I am. So thank you for that. That actually put a smile on my face when I read that, and it is maybe a nice thing just to say for everyone. I do try to engage as much as I can with the comments, whether they're giving a reply on YouTube or if people stop by on the Twitch channel. It's always very nice to hear from people, and I understand for me, I almost never do it when I have broadcasters that I like watching, so I never want to take something like that for granted. But it is, for me at least, it is one of the small perks. So thank you for all of you who have done that. And I'm hoping people don't feel too hard done by if they didn't get an individual one. If you are, I don't know, let me know and I'll find some way of saying thanks. Now, I did notice that I don't have anything on my to-do list. We are at the end of spring, and I actually don't know if Numa is going to come up. I also noticed that we've got Sights and Sensations sitting here, and if memory serves, I didn't have a clear idea on where I was going to put that. I don't know if I was going to put it inside of a like a higher level skill, or if I was going to try and use it for something else. I'm slightly inclined towards leveling it up, even though Ragged Crossroads and Bells and Braziers they already kind of give me what I would be getting out of Sights and Sensations. But I do believe this one also gives me Solomon's Preparation. So we'll see, though. Obviously, if it's Numa, I'm going to have to make that decision quite quickly. And if it isn't Numa, then we have a little bit more time to figure this all out. But for now, I think I'm going to unpause and see where the day takes us. I always feel a little self-conscious whenever there's these extended silences. In the tone of the game, it's sometimes nice to just sort of have a little bit of a break while things are going through. I remember when I first started broadcasting, one of the things I kept hearing from people was that I talked constantly, and I'm like, I don't think that's a bad thing for a camless stream. But I notice it a lot whenever I do a recording. Okay, so it looks like we have avoided looks like we've avoided Numa. So again, we have kind of whatever time we want. In fact, it's a good day though to do Sights and Sensations because we've already got the sunny day. We'll see who shows up. It's the Affair of the Endless Guest, so we definitely have well, okay, that's not true. Technically, there's no rule saying that you have to have more than one visitor. However, I'm unaware of one that has only one visitor. It's actually maybe worth mentioning, though, we will read The Affair of the Endless Guest because I think for a number of you, there is some happy news that came out over the last couple of days. An inhabitation of worms is never to be taken lightly. In this case, worms have chosen to inhabit one Spencer Hobson on assignment by the Bureau in Krakow. Hobson has remained unusually articulate for an inhabitee, and apparently he considers the worms his guest. So for those of you unfamiliar with the significance of this, first of all, Book of Hours is the second game in a setting known as the Secret Histories. The first one was called Cultist Simulator, and a number of the characters that you encounter in this game would be antagonists. They're sort of investigators or related, usually affiliated with the Suppression Bureau. Actually, they all might be, but I'm trying to remember offhand if there was at least the possibility that they'd be investigators or like journalists or something at one point, but I don't think any of them made it to the final version, or if they were ever implemented at all for that matter. But you had Connie Lee, you had Zachary Wakefield, the weary detective, who in this game appears as Douglas Moore. And then one of the figures who has not appeared as a guest is someone called Spencer Hobson. And if you get the affair of the Endless Guest, now you know why. But the big news that came out recently was that Weather Factory has announced their third game, which will both be the third video game, let's say. It'll be the third video game in the Secret History setting. There's also a tabletop experience called The Lady Afterwards. And it's called Traveling at Night. It will be a CRPG in sort of the Disco Elysium sense. So in this case, there won't be combat. It'll be something that's sort of trying to push forward the idea of what a CRPG can be. And certainly it looks very interesting, but one of the things to remember just before people get too excited about it, if you've only recently come to this developer from Book of Hours, they are a husband and wife team. They do use contractors, but essentially it's a very, very small studio. And one of the things that they consider one of their advantages, and I agree with this, is that they get to announce things early and sort of do some prototypes, show off what they're thinking about, and get that immediate response from their audience. And so what this means is that there will be a development cycle that's possibly a bit longer than what you might be used to from other independent companies. Essentially because I imagine what they have right now is not a game by any usual standard. I imagine what they have is sort of a set of demos and tests to sort of show that they can do this thing, and they're very excited by these ideas. And now the question is, how do you implement all of this stuff? So over the next 2 to 4 years, we get an exciting sort of drip of new information about Traveling at Night, where the main character will in fact be Spencer Hobson after his inhabitation by the worms. And a little bit of a fun one for me. I've been really enjoying the Apple TV series, Slow Horses. I'm a bit of a sucker for spy stories. So this one will be taking place in the Cold War, which I think is kind of neat. So anyway, sorry, I know that's an extended advertisement for a game that is not out yet, but I know a number of you may be excited by that, and it's rather timely that we get the affair of the Endless Guest for the stream. This definitely was not planned in terms of some sort of marketing setup. Okay. Sorry, this was also trying to buy me a little bit of time to figure out what I wanted to do for some next steps. So I've got some packages to open. I think it's pretty clear here that I want at least one memory. However, it might be an idea to still invite Denzel even if we're going to have a visitor. The justification behind this is that he can give me memories, and seeing as Sights and Sensations needs winter or sky, there's a chance that I might get what I need just talking to him. So let's do, maybe the better way around this is to say, what's the alternative? So the alternative here would be to hire an orchard keeper. If you ever forget what the different characters can do, you'll get the 2, sometimes 3 aspects. And the first one is the one that gives more. So in this case, we know that we can get 2 nectar and 1 heart. We can also get 1 heart for Mrs. Kill, although of course we'll be paying the same amount for the orchard keeper in that case. So our options here, we've got the Wheel-Filled Spring, which you'll notice here gives us nectar. We've got the Mist-Sunk Meadow. This is a rather important location eventually, but not an urgency for us right now. The Shadowed Stair we can really open whenever we want. It's just a matter of having 3. And in fact, because of the Salon, we could use the Wild Surmise in this case, although that feels like a waste of that particular one. Usually I'll use something like a Name Day Riddle. The Shrouded Space would be for Mr. Kill, which we now have access to, but there's nothing unique about this here. In fact, we might want to wait for something like the something like the like winter and the snow to deal with that. We've got the Weeping Chamber, Fallen Bells. Definitely tempting with the winter stuff, but I think the Rose Haunted Hall is one that I may want to seriously consider, although that is one that I can also use with Grail. Heart Haunted Room would definitely be one for Mrs. Kill. Okay, so I have a decent enough idea in terms of how I'm going to make this happen. I think the best way to navigate this right now is to bring in Denzel. And again, it's not necessarily that I think there's something uniquely special about Denzel right now. It's more the idea that he's free. Although I am slightly tempted... sorry, there is one last step that I'm going to take here. I do want to see with the Nectar. Okay, so if we bring in the Keeper, that starts us off with 2. So we add a health. That gives us 1 for 3. Then, of course, we can add either the Mortar and Pestle or the Mixing Bowls or whatever. So we add the tool. Oh, sorry, actually, we don't do that. We add the Knife because the Knife gives us 2 Nectar. I keep forgetting about that. So that takes us up to 5, and we only need 7. So the reason why I had a bit of a change of heart here is that the hiring the Orchard Keeper does not require an element of the soul. So if we add the Orchard Keeper, the Health, and the Knife, that brings us up to 5 of the 7 that we need. Now, normally what I would do would be I would try and get a memory of some kind, and the best memory in that case would be the Earth Sign, but we don't actually have an Earth Sign yet, and an Impulse wouldn't be sufficient on its own. So I think the better thing for me to do would actually be to pour a glass of the Dandelion Wine. I think we've used up the bottle that we had in the room, but Dandelion Wine is not something that's very hard for us to get our hands on. So I think, I know I spent some time sort of hemming and hawing about it, but I think this is the better path for what I have today. The only other thing I could think of would be maybe using the Sea Blessed Pears. So if I wind up with an Impulse, I could give them the bowl of Sea Blessed Pears. So what I think I'll do is I'll run through the day, we'll generate the memories that we can from them, and if we wind up with an Impulse, then we can use the pears, and if we wind up with something else, we'll sort of roll back and use the Dandelion Wine. Assistance from an Orchard Keeper. In autumn, the Orchard Keepers come to sell their wares at Brandkrug. A shilling will buy one's help. Okay, so this isn't the only thing that we want to do today, so we'll also catalog the books that we have. In this case, this is the Dawn Period book is an obvious candidate for the metals, so we'll do that right here. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's Dawn Period, sometime before the end of the first millennium commonly reckoned. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. We also have, so there's a couple of other considerations that I may want to put in front of myself, which is we do have an opportunity for another salon. I don't think I've done any kind of prep for that, but it would be good to get that done sooner rather than later. And I don't actually have that many more. I have some variety in terms of guests, but there isn't that much more for me to consider in terms of the group. If we did a salon before, we can do it again with largely the same group. Although I will confess, I did get quite lucky in terms of the memories that we generated. The other alternative is we can read a book. Reading a book earlier would be better. Now the drawback here is all of these seem to be ones where I might be pushing up the memories a little bit further than I would want. Although I also seem to recall we got, yeah, so we've got the Henneveck text. So we do have Trades Mahaira. We do have Stone Stories as well. Okay. I wish I had a little more of a clear idea in terms of what I wanted to do with these language texts, just because, or the texts that are in another language, just because it's not hard to read them. It is hard to decide what to do with the memories after they've been generated. So the question is, do I want to try and make these work now, or do I want to try and do something else with my elements of the soul today? For now, though, let's use the Tryst to open one of the packages, and then once we're done with the Orchard Keeper, or once we hire the Orchard Keeper, I think I am going to use the Shap to try and earn a little bit of money, at least at the start. So I think I'll probably skip reading a book today. However, I'm not going to rule out preparing some food for the salon. Okay, assistance from an Orchard Keeper. In Cornwall, it's quite possible to take a stride from the richest vegetation into the abomination of desolation. It has been said in mockery that Cornwall does not grow wood enough to make coffins for the people. Sabine Baring-Gould. So first things first, let's level up the character, or the assistant. So I can lend my assistant something to help increasing their abilities. I also need to remember that the bunch of grapes is an option for leveling up the Orchard Keeper as well. Oh, I said I was going to earn a bit of money. So the money here is really in prep for the salons, but I also want to try and alternate so that by the end of the day I'm using this to try and either open something or read a book or something along those lines. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. And here we have the Iron Book, also contaminated, so witchworms. A manual of the Ordo Limea, an order of quasi-immortals who maintained a secret enclave at the source of the river Limia in the Roman province of Hispania Gallicaea. This manual was compiled by one Melari Yivni, who claims to have joined the Ordo from the crossroads of the waters. If memory serves, I believe I also had... I had a couple plans to cure some of these books. That's not what I'm going to concern myself with right now. I am going to have to remember the Iron Book over there, though. Okay. So all of this is just kind of sitting idle, but I'm going to try and fix that soon. I am ready to lend my limbs. Boosts heart, scale, and nectar. So at this point, what we'll do after the 20 seconds to set up the Orchard Keeper, we're going to keep talking to them to just generate whatever memories I can. Again, it's not critical. There are other ways that I can get the memory, but I'm at this point in the early game where I have fewer elements of the soul and more time. So one consequence of that is I'm willing to wait and see what the best move for my character is, as opposed to later on in the game where I'm really just trying to fill as many slots as I can with elements of the soul. A couple of other efficiencies that I could have done, for instance, would be taking my core to draw up some water so that I can, you know, pour a glass of water and then turn that into another element of the soul that I could use for the day. I tend to find if I kind of need to do that earlier in the day to have that work the best. Although actually in this case it makes sense because the metal will allow me to catalog another book. So a quick nap in a warm bed with something comforting to drink while the winds chase the clouds and the clouds chase the sun. And another domain Reveline, so we have a slot for that in the wine cellar. So the real question here is whether or not I have any other uses for the Tryst. So a couple things that I want to keep in mind with Sights and Sensations is the only element of the soul that I have to level this up is my Whist. Tryst is how I can go to Crowcross Sands. That's its main point right now. If I want to go to the Moor, which does have its uses, I would use health, but the drawback here is that the health and the core are also the way that I do gardening, drop water, and in this case, improve the Orchard Keeper as well. So, and there's quite a few things that I want to try and get. So we've got the pears available, we can try and get grapes or vegetables, and of course winter's coming, so ideally we'll figure out what we need over that period. Otherwise we'll have to wait until spring. Even then, for spring we wouldn't get the vegetables, we'd be getting the grapes. And it looks actually like we're waiting on, so it's just as well that I'm not making food, I guess, because it looks like we're already waiting on an order. But I was going to point out that the core and the health are also the ones that I can use at the cooking station. So we can use Arab for that, but ideally we'd be making a bunch of dishes all at once. I can make the orange jumble, though, if I want. I've got the sugar and the almonds. But like I said, we're at a point now where I can afford to wait a little bit on the different tasks. So, having said all that, I think probably I'd like to try and take as much as I can off my to-do list. And that means, in this case, opening a container. So, abandoned luggage, long past the help of any lost and found. Something rare. Crack open the container, delight in your discovery. And we have Daymare. Grafin Friederike Dagmar Sophia Teresa Helena Begina von Nagelsberg, if you prefer. She doesn't. So she knows Latin, Greek, and Ramson. I believe we got Ramson from Fraser Strathcoin. So in this case, we're really just looking for a... we're really just looking for the card at this point. Which, of course, means that I can apply the occult scrap towards something, given that I'm going to want to add her to the list. I believe she uses knock. Yeah, knock food and drink. I also think she's somewhat difficult to invite, so I don't know quite how I feel about prioritizing her. I am going to keep talking to the Orchard Keeper. We can keep Daymare waiting for 6 minutes, so that's not a big problem. I could encourage my assistant, work with them for a little while, exalt them, or I could just listen to whatever they might have to say. And in fact, it may be an idea for me to sit down and figure out, because we're getting close to the halfway point of the day. I've got, so I can sort of block off my elements of the soul here. I've got the core, Arab, and the health. So these would be my cooking and gardening skills. The Shapt and the Tryst are sort of the free ones. So if I needed to generate an element of the soul, I could use this Shapt to do so. And then the Tryst would be something that I'd either open a package with, or it would be something that I'd read a book with. So we don't have any more packages to open so far as I can tell. There isn't anything, immediately pressing for me to deal with. And as much, I know I tried to sort of look at the items inside of the rooms a bit more consistently than I have now, but there's a lot of things and I don't have a lot of elements of the soul. So I think in this case, it makes sense for me to go to Crowcross Sands in this case. So take a long walk along the ocean side. If I know what to look for, I might find something the ocean has forsaken. Gather in autumn. What is the sea seeded today? So in 90 seconds, we'll figure out what the sea has given up. Again, the Whist is off limits. The Shapt is something that I may use to open I may use to read a book. But we're kind of past the point of reading a book for new memories. At this point, we're doing what we can with the resources we already have. Tuppence will buy me a hearty meal and a quiet place where I can rest and gather my thoughts. It is autumn when the leaves rustle. The silent landlady has served me apple pie with steamed cream in the window nook. I've learned something, or perhaps just remembered it. So the fear on its own doesn't really get me anything. but this is kind of par for the course for the assistants. I do this so that I have the potential of generating something. I'll keep an eye on the timer, but we're still okay in terms of getting what we need. Essentially, if I feel like we're running short, we have the wine cellar open, so there's nothing saying that I need to save the dandelion wine. Ooh. This is not the one I wanted, but this is definitely a good one. Lignum vitae blank, the hardest of all woods. So this is usually a good one to make the Pyrus this one. Pyrus orichalcinius. Okay, again, the gossip isn't something dramatic to work with, but I'm happy to work with what I've got. And we are getting to a point where I'm going to want to start making some decisions here. So I think we're definitely going to level up sights and sensations. So I'll need, okay, so the shaft we'll use the shaft for that. We'll use the wine for the orchard keeper, and then I think that would be an argument for me to do gardening or to make some kind of a dish. So I may spend a little time on the salon just to, figure out the one dish that will appeal to the most guests. It'll probably be orange jumble, but I don't want to rule out other possibilities. All right, Catalogue a Baronial Period book. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's baronial period, roughly the 1500s to 1700s. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. And a storm. There are storms great enough to shake the moon from the sky and one's thoughts from one's skull. So this is good for us here. This has now saved us the book. So we will take... Where'd you go? Sights and sensations. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. So under normal circumstances, this would be the point where I'd say, okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'll take the shaft and I'll read a book to get the impulse, let's say. I don't really want to do that now, again, because dandelion wine is the, smallest possible cost that I could be incurring right now. But it does invite the question in terms of what I want to do with the remaining element of the soul. If I have to, sure, I can make some money. Maybe that's not the most elevated use for the element of the soul. So a simple example of something that I could do, we've got the TRN drinking cocoa. We've got, I think it's the Caterin Hero Second Flush of Sam. We've also got the Lapsang Souchong. We have lots of different things that we can brew, and presumably we've bought this, we're using this or we have this because we plan to use it at some point. So if I don't make it now, then that's just going to be a cost that I impose for myself later. The alternative also would be, I don't think we have anything knock oriented. So that needs heart, nectar. So that's why we want Nona's desk. I think, yeah, the witchworm's here. This is the same. So no luck in that sense. All right, I'm actually feeling a little stumped in terms of what I want to try and make out of the... Well, one thing I could try to do would be to try and make a name day riddle, but I think we're coming up short on that still. Shoot. Maybe the best thing I can do is to just read the books then, but... Okay, well... The Arab... Let's say we use the Arab for the kitchen. Yeah, actually, you know what? Okay, I don't need to make this complicated. So I'm going to take a look for drinking cocoa and second flush of Sam. So we have both cups and a pot here. We have a pot. Okay, so we're not exactly running short, but for at least one of the shaft, I think I'm okay brewing it. All right, the lodge fireplace fire always accepts gifts and boils the kettle for tea. Renounce or brew. If I cast an object into the fire, it will be transformed, destroyed, lost. If the item is brewable, add a soul card to brew it instead of destroying it. Brew over the fire. Bring water to the boil. Permit the potential here to express itself. The last question is, what do I want to do? Let's say with the Arab, right? So the core and the health, those have arguments of saying, this is something that we want to get some vegetables, or we want to get, we want to do some gardening with. Same argument doesn't exist for the Arab. So out of the individuals that we can invite, we've got Serena and Olympie Bichet want Forge. For some reason, Zachary says water. I think that's supposed to be winter. Yeah, so it's Forge Scale, Lantern, Grail, Heart, and Winter. So if I take a look at what I can make... Well, I can really make a little bit of anything, so there's no super argument one way or the other for that. So potatoes are always an option. Orange jumble. You know what? I think orange jumble is a non-controversial choice. It's easy to make. I think we'll start with that. Right, and I always need to add the spicing. So that'll satisfy... So the other thing that's nice about this is it satisfies Olympie Bichet, Serena Blackwood, Arthur and Douglas Moore, Corso Reverti. The only people who it doesn't work for would be Zachary Wakefield and Fraser Strathcoyne. So I probably didn't need to think as long as I did about that one. Now, the big question on this one is, what do I want to try and do? We only have the one bowl of pears right now. Well, we obviously have the higher level ones too, but I think I want at least one more. So we'll start with that. Fragrant pears, soft in the hand. And then the trickiest one here is what I want as far as gardening goes. I've noticed somewhat suspiciously I don't seem to have honey scar jasmine sitting around, and I also don't have honey scar jasmine tea. So at least with fragrant chalice I have the option of brewing it. That doesn't seem to be the case with the honey scar jasmine unless I've completely... Oh, here we go. I don't know. I can see the sense in bringing in another. So I think we're going to do that here. We'll use leaves and thorns. Honey scar jasmine like a dart of sweet fire. 5 minutes over. I did want to try and put a little bit more time in because I spent so much time talking about traveling at night. Let's try and get... I'll try and get a little bit more progress in before we wrap up. So, sea glass, smooth as an egg, frosted like a winter window. I should probably serve the dandelion wine at this point, because even if we wind up with the impulse, we're not gonna use it. Okay, pour it out. Now I have an idea of this book's nature and its contents. The Fallen Cross, in which Julian Cosley, magus, immortal, occasionally anarchist, argues that through language the Carapace Cross decayed to seed the lives of our ancestors. This one gives us Oranoscopy, which I believe we got through a salon, but we can at least bring that up to level 2. I think this one gives us a regret. So this is definitely one for us to follow up on. Alright, the skill is now level 3, its power aspects have also increased. And we just got the impulse. Alright, well we can keep that overnight, I suppose, if I want to hire the Orchard Keeper again. I'm actually just trying to think, so... The situation hasn't really changed, actually, so you know what, let's give her the impulse. So I can discuss a memory with my assistant. This will use up the memory, but boost the assistant's abilities for the day. I guess the real question here would be... I mean, I guess the pairs in this case? I'm just trying to think in terms of, like, I want to make sure that the replacements are making sense. All right, steam and scent both rise. It's ready. TRN limited drinking cocoa. TRN spices and savors department describes this as the secret sacrament of the last Inca. And apparently I don't have enough room. Okay, so that's going to put us behind on Daymare, but I think we're good to go. So I know this is a little bit of a quiet one, but I think we've got a decent, path forward. So I'll probably work out the salon in earnest once the shipment arrives. I wouldn't be opposed to just doing sort of the same group as before. It did also occur to me that with the Tryst, I should also be making some more ink to invite the guests over, although we have 3, so in theory I could just dedicate it. Yeah, it'd take half a day, but I could just dedicate half a day to brewing inks and we'd be fine. But yeah, we should probably be able to get a salon done within 2 or 3 in-game days. The real question, though, is if I want to do it that early. As always, the tension that I've got right now in this particular playthrough is I want to do a salon early because it will generate lessons for me, and those lessons are going to be things that I use to improve my skills, and those skills eventually will be committed to the Tree of Wisdoms. But I also want to be in a situation where I can commit more stuff to the Tree of Wisdoms in order to get the elements of the soul that will allow me to progress further in those salons. And we've talked about the Tree of Wisdoms. The way that I've kind of plotted my my ascension through it is tough. That's the easiest way I can put it. Like the barriers that I've set for myself in terms of higher level skills mean that I should not expect to have something like Faust for a while. And so a consequence of that is just I need to get a little clever, or I need to be willing to accept that I'm not going to be able to do all of the things that I want. But then again, that's kind of the fun of these sorts of playthroughs, right? You give yourself a little bit of a challenge or a restriction and see how far you can go with it. So What I'll probably do is I'll see what the remaining book gives me, and then we can decide if there's any benefit to waiting out the Salon. But I think in this case, it probably makes sense for me to do it earlier and then just work with whatever lessons I get out of it. Anyways, this is a longer episode. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you Wednesday for the next one. Until then, take care.